Can press the right. Lori, welcome to the Girls Who Recover podcast. I've been waiting for you my whole life to join.
It's so good to see you.
I'm so glad to see you. We're going to jump right in. Tell us who you are, where you are, and the thing that's making you feel most alive right now. Who you are, where you are, and the thing that's making you feel most alive right now.
So I'm Lori Heisler. I am a good friend of Miss Dana, who I cherish and adore, and I'm so utterly grateful for and proud of. I'm coming to you from Knoxville, Tennessee, way of Colorado, which if you've learned anything about me, you'll know Colorado will always have my heart. But I'm an educator, I'm a creative, I'm a cat mom, I'm an adventurer. And I just turned 49. So I'm going into my 50th year and I couldn't feel more fabulous.
Oh, I love that. Can you say that again? That last thing you just said. Can you say
I'm
that
going
again?
into my 50th year and I couldn't feel more fabulous.
Yes. Can I get an amen on a weekday? Fabulous. Well, I'm so grateful for you. Just to out myself, I'm obsessed with this woman. I have loved her since the moment we met. And if I could just chase you around the world, Lori, I would and plan to. Now that we've both got our passports, watch out 2025 because here we come. So I'm grateful that you're here to share your experience and your strength and your hope. Girls Who Recover is a community for women who want to hear how to transform setbacks into gorgeous comebacks. And so let's jump into it. Can you share with us a setback that you've experienced and take us maybe to the moment or the time period or whatever it is that when you think about your life, because we all have these, when you're like, oh, that was terrible, or that was hard, or that was difficult. Is there one thing that comes to mind that you'd love to share with us?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of setbacks that come to mind, right? We have them. It's a part of life.
Welcome to being a human.
And I haven't always recovered, so easily or so quickly. And when I think about where to start, I almost want to start about 10 years ago when I went through this fitness program for the first time in my life and got in the best shape in the best shape of my life. I had my diet dialed in, I had my workouts dialed in. I was leading a school in Denver and I was waking up 4 a.m. Getting my workouts in and then sometimes going back to the gym at 6 because I was doing this program and I just really wanted to see results. I had a photo shoot scheduled, so that was really helpful. And I was dialed in and got in the best shape of my life. And then a relationship that I was in took a turn. At the same time, my I left my job. I was really unhappy with where I was working, and I became lost for a really long time. I almost a 10-year period, I would say, where I just felt like I was trying to find myself, I was trying to find my way, and I struggled. And, in terms of kind of fast forward now, my most recent setback was a few years ago. I guess it's been about 2.5 years ago. I was living in Colorado, living in the mountains, which was a dream of mine, and working with you actually. And we loved our work together. But when I decided to move to Tennessee because the house that I was living in, I was renting and the owners were selling. And I lived in Colorado for almost 20 years. It was right after COVID. I was experiencing a lot of loneliness. And Denver itself had changed. So I knew I didn't want to move back to Denver. So I had to make a decision. Decided to move to Tennessee. Long story short, my mom lives here, had some friends that lived here, another friend suggested it. So at the time, I thought I was going to move here and buy a house. I was ready. I was, 47, I think at the time, maybe 46. I can't remember anymore. And I was like, okay, my finances are in a great place. I'm making great money. Tennessee is cheaper than Colorado. I'm ready to invest, or at least I will be in a year. So I got all my ducks in a row. moved here, and then my work like it just plummeted. I should say, not exploded. It actually did the opposite. It plummeted, meaning my work came to a halt. The work that I had been doing, which meant my money came to a halt, which meant I was in scarcity mode, right? And really struggling. And so I, unbeknownst to me, this entire time, I was gaining weight, and I didn't know it, until February of this year. I saw a picture of myself, with a group of women that I was leading in a school. And I thought I looked so cute that day, Dana. My outfit was cute. I had this awesome, fun jacket on that I always got compliments on. And then I saw the picture. And sometimes it just takes you being able to step outside of yourself and see reality. And for me, I saw the picture and I didn't recognize that person. And I didn't like who I saw. And I wanted to be somebody who liked who I saw. And I will say, I am somebody who now likes what I see.
Okay, hold on. We're not there yet. We're not there
Yes.
yet. Can I ask you some questions? You
Yes.
want to add more to it? Are you ready
No,
for
you go
questions?
ahead. Go right ahead.
Okay, so I'm just gonna go there. So you said a couple of things that were a little bit ambiguous. And I think that there is such freedom in being specific with those kinds of things. So would you be willing, you said two things. One is that you said of so many beautiful things. First of all, thank you for sharing all that with us. Um, and I just have to take a breath here because I'm so moved by your bravery and your courage that you've already shown and that you're about to.
Thank you.
But it moves me because when we tell our stories in a vulnerable and an authentic way, we set each other free. We become a lighthouse with our experiences, specifically our setbacks, because anybody can talk about how great it is now. But it takes a lot of bravery and a lot of courage to reflect back and say, oh, this is what it felt like when I was in the middle of this. You use words like loneliness, plummeted, lost, and you said some things took a turn. So let's go back 10 years. Speak into either the relationship. You said the relationship took a turn, go there, or the job. You left your job because you were unhappy there. Like maybe pick one of those
Yeah.
and tell us about that.
Um, I'll talk about my relationship. I had been with a man for 2 years, and I loved him. He loved me, and what I didn't know was that he had an addiction to pornography. And I've never gone through so much pain. The lies, text messages, emails, just the some of the things that I saw and bear witness to were so painful that it changed me. Um, it changed me. It changed how I felt about myself. It changed my ability to trust someone, because I trusted this man. This man was good, is a good man, right? But oh my gosh, the lies to cover up the shame, right? And to avoid hurting me. But it was horrible. All of that was happening at the same time that work wasn't going well. And work had always gone well for me, and I was making the most money that I'd ever made in a job that a title that I worked really hard for. And my boss also was not being truthful with me at the same time. She had planned on leaving, and she was interviewing people for her job without telling me, and had never asked me to interview for her job. So all of those things were happening simultaneously, and it hurt. It hurt. Uh, yeah, it hurt, and that pain lasted for a long time, before I got help with it. And then, I'm not sure if you want to know more about that. I'm happy to go into where I was, with the loneliness, like several years later. But that it just really kind of, it was like this. pain that eventually lightened, but never really went away,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, and I see some similarities, right? So some secrets on the relationship side, some secrets on the professional side. And like, what did that feel like? Can you bring us back to that moment? Well, like, what were the thoughts you were thinking or are you feeling? You said it changed you, but like, say more. What did that feel
Um,
like?
the perfectionist in me, right? The perfectionist in me was like, it was a huge ego blow. And I put a lot of blame on myself, especially I would say in that relationship. Um, the other thing that was really painful about that was I was in my late 30s and early 40s, which are my last kind of, for me, my last kind of chance for my childbearing years. And I had always wanted to have children. And I was angry. I was pissed. I was so mad. But to be fair, the only person that I could be upset with is myself because I stayed, right? I stayed. Um, and I no longer hold any resentment towards him in that way because I understand that that was my choice. And I think there was probably something else going on there as well, perhaps. But at the time, I couldn't see it. And I just felt like, what have I done to deserve this pain, right? And what missteps have I taken that have led me to this person or that have led me to this situation where I'm not trusted enough for my boss to tell me the truth, right? And I remember one thing that did help shift that somewhat, at least with my working environment, was I hired a life coach. It's the first time I'd ever even heard about a life coach.
Mm,
And several sessions in, I was talking about my boss, and she stopped me. And my life coach stopped me and said, "That's enough. Let's stop talking about her and let's instead ask ourselves, why are you allowing somebody to treat you that way?"
wow. Can I just want to hold space for what you just said, and I'd love to invite you to say it one more time. So I heard you say, she said, we're gonna be done with that. We're gonna stop talking about the other person,
Right.
and then tell us again what she said next.
She said, let's instead talk about why you're letting somebody treat you that way.
And how did that question land? Like, how did you experience that?
Oh, I was grateful. I was crying.
Mm.
I was dumbfounded because no one had ever put it to me that way. Right? It was like, yeah, Lori, you're playing the victim. And if there's one thing that I really despise, it's when people play the victim. And I know I'm guilty of it. We all are. But I grew up in a family where it kind of felt like it was always like blaming somebody else or being critical of someone else or blaming someone else for mistakes. So when she said that to me, I cried because it was truthful. And I felt so grateful because it was such an empowering thing for her to say, where it was like, no, you take your power back because I can't control how somebody else treats me. Right. But I can control whether or not I allow that to happen. So it was pretty powerful.
So that, I mean, you jumped ahead because my question after that, I mean, I think that any woman who's listening can relate to so much of what you're saying, but like in these really hard, moments of devastation where it's like, what is even happening right now? And
Mhm.
this question of like, what led me here? What got me here? Like, what was it about my, I didn't call it this at the time, but my own path, my own adventures that got me to this situation? I mean, I have a moment, many moments like that where it was just like, what is happening? What is going on? And the question is, okay, great. So you're in the depths, the darkness of this turmoil from this man who has an addiction, and your this dishonesty and secretiveness at work, and you're realizing that like, what, I'm in my late 30s, early 40s, you're feeling angry. And it sounds like the step you took, because there's always a step, right? Like there's
Mhm.
always one step in the other direction from devastation to destiny. And it sounds like that first step was you hiring a coach. Very wise move, might I say.
It was. I continue to be grateful for her. I really do. Because it was one of the most valuable lessons, honestly. Sometimes I've worked with counselors before, I've worked with therapists, and I do remember specific things that they have said. I might not remember, the hour-long conversations, but there are definitely learnings that I have taken away from those people in my life, and I'll be forever grateful because I lean back on them,
Yeah.
those lessons.
So she called you out. She called you in, is what she did. Right? She
Mm-hmm.
called you into your own power.
Mm-hmm.
And you said you felt grateful, you cried, right? Maybe just like a realization and understanding of like, oh, yes, I do have agency here, despite all the, I'm trying not to curse, at least in the first interview, but like the non-sensory that's on the outside, like all the things that happen to all of us, relationships and job issues and all the things, right? But you had this moment of, okay, yeah, that's not okay, but and there's nothing we can do except for step into my own power. What can I do? Okay, so we have this beautiful moment. You're grateful, and my experience shows me that like yes, there's this moment of clarity, and then a lot of fears start to show up.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe can you talk us through either fears you had on the backside of that moment or during that moment or as you adventured forward? What were the core fears that came up and I like to say danced naked in your driveway?
The fears that came up. Gosh. Well, I mean, with my relationship, I guess the fear of never finding that person and being able to have that family that I wanted at the time, that was a fear. But it was more of a just continuous fear of not being able to trust the person that I was with. And the fear of the pain that was like, what's the next thing he's going to do? And it did keep going like that for a while with him. In my job, I guess the fear is that imposter syndrome, right? Like I knew I didn't belong there. I knew, right? So I come from a little background there to kind of fill in the blanks. I come from a like how do I say this? I was the first person in my family to graduate high school, right? My mom and my sister both had babies very young when they were teenagers, and my mom had been married and divorced several times, and I chose a different path, mainly because I saw what their mistakes were, and I was scared that I didn't want to make those same mistakes. And school was a haven for me. So I went all the way. I graduated. I spoke at my high school graduation. I went on to college. I went and got my master's in education. So at the time when I was an assistant principal, almost about to make it to that very next kind of highest step, right? Um, I remember when I first got the job, I was so excited. Oh, I'll be finally be able to pay my student loans. I made it. I made it. And this was only 2 years in that this was happening.
Yeah.
And it was that fear of, it's almost like that voice of, see, you knew you didn't belong there, right? And it kind of reinforced that. And I think what I consistently was telling myself was that it was all my fault. Something
Mm.
I did was my fault. And I took all the responsibility. I took all the ownership, all the blame. And that in there was actually where the learning happened.
Can I just ask you just out of curiosity, where do you think that came from? That voice, it's like, it's all my fault. I'm to blame. It's all my responsibility. Like, can you trace that back to something or where I'm curious, like, where does this come from? Because as you already know, it's, it's a pandemic
Yes.
of women specifically.
Oh, Dana.
Feel free to pass at any time. We can
Yeah,
pass.
I mean, I'll just keep it simple and say I know it stems from my childhood, my an experience I had with my father when I was really young. And also being in a in a relationship with my mother who's highly critical and blamed herself for a lot, right? So I know where it stemmed from. But, oftentimes, and I don't know, I'm sure other listeners will feel the same and can relate to this. We might know why, right?
Yeah,
We might
yeah.
understand, oh yeah, I can see how that led to this behavior or this feeling or this emotion or this inaction, but it's the how. Okay, now what, right? So I know why,
Yeah.
great. I'm well informed, I'm self-aware, but now what?
Thanks, therapy.
Right. And that's the part where many times in my life, when you talk about setbacks, that's where I get stuck. Like I can see the why and how I got there, but
Yeah.
or maybe not always how I got there, but I can see the thoughts behind it, right? And kind of maybe the experiences behind it that led me to that. But it's often the now what, how do I pull myself out of this?
Okay, so I'm gonna put a pin because we're coming right back, but I just want to say, like, this is I love therapy. Therapy has helped me in many ways. I have a personal therapist, I've got a marriage therapist, and it's very helpful for healing and for a look back to look forward. And this is what I love about coaching, and the difference between therapy and coaching is therapy is for healing, and it's for reflection, and it's for family of origin, and for all the things, right?
Yeah.
And coaching is I'm pulling the pin back out. It's okay, great. Now that we know that, what you going to do? What are we going to do? What's in your sphere of influence? What's in your locus of control? And what's one step you can take in your own, allowing the things that are outside of us to be what they are. Mel Robbins is about to drop a book. It comes out tomorrow called Let Them. And I haven't read it yet, but I'm waiting for it to arrive at the door. But it's sort of the gist is, because she has a beautiful podcast on it. Check it out if you haven't. But it's like, yeah, let them be addicted. Let them be critical. Let them do whatever they're going to do. And then the question is, what can I do? Not in reaction to them, but in service to my own dreams and my own passion and my own purpose. So let's go back to you. You said like to take the first step or the first action and really just stepping into, okay, now that we know all the things and
Mhm.
where they came from, what now? So talk us through, like, let's move out of the setback and into like the transition, because there's always a what happened or what it was like, and then a what happened and what it's like now. So let's shift into, okay, what happened? Take us from the relationship devastation and the fears that you're having and the job and the boss and all the things. And like, how did Lori come home to herself? What
Well,
happened?
I quit my job. I quit my job and I wasn't sure what I was going to do, but I knew I didn't belong there anymore. And I will say until this day, like I don't regret doing that. And it's something I'm really proud of because when I'm not happy with how things are going or being treated, when I can come from a place of empowerment and just decide, me being the one to decide, not letting things be decided for me, so empowering. And then in terms of the relationship, I did stay for a long time, but to everything you just said, I eventually broke things off with him. And even then thereafter, we were still very close, but it was a decision to let go of what he was doing and worrying about him. I couldn't worry about him anymore. I couldn't worry if he was doing this, if he was lying, if he was still engaging in, pornography. It wasn't that's on him. He had to own that. That had nothing to do with me. And so when I made that decision, it transformed our relationship. It transformed our friendship. We're not together, but we are still close friends.
Mhm.
And those two things happening all but simultaneously while they were hard, gosh, when I look back and think like how I took my power back,
Yeah.
right? Like I'm proud of me. I'm proud of me for that. Um, and then
I'm just gonna, let me just tell you, I've got so many goosebumps right now, shimmering all through my body.
Mhm.
Proud of you.
Yeah.
Can we think of a more beautiful thing that a woman can say to herself, but I'm proud of me
Mm,
for doing the hard thing and for taking the time that it took. I'm proud of me.
yeah,
So if you're
yeah.
listening, maybe you could say that out loud in your car, in your bath, like wherever you are. I'm proud of me, and bring yourself back to a hard decision that you made, honoring that part of you that was brave enough and courageous enough to do it. And I imagine, like, don't want to project on you, but I imagine there was some fear around making those two decisions: one, to
Oh,
leave the job; two, to leave the relationship.
oh my gosh. So much fear. But I was going to say, especially to people who are listening, like taking that leap was not absent of fear, nor was it absent of pain. It took me a long time to heal, a long time. And yeah, I mean, I would say, oh, I said a 10-year span because truly, like it didn't take me 10 years to heal, but it was 10 years of more of a roller coaster than what I would have cared,
Yep.
for it to have been. Lots of highs. I mean, that year I quit my job, I went to South Africa, which had been a dream of mine. And you know why I went? Because I had control over it, because I could. And because I was like, well, this is one thing I can do, so I will. So there were definitely highlights in those 10 years, but there were also continued setbacks and lots of lows. Um, yeah.
So, you capture something so beautifully, that evolution, expansion, and evolving isn't a linear process,
Which I like
right?
it, right?
Right.
I
Me
think we
too.
all
I'm
want
like,
it
but
to
can we
be.
just get A to B and fast as possible, the most
That's the shortest
efficient,
way.
no nonsense kind of way? Can we get A to B? But I found on the journey to recovery, and listen, sister, if you're taking a breath right now, you are on a journey of recovery. You don't have to have an addiction to anything to be on your own journey to recovery. What that just means is that we're all coming home to ourselves, and it's not a straight line. And so I love that you're honoring this. There are highs and there are lows, and welcome. Welcome to the journey of your own expansion. So I also love that you said you did all of that, not in the absence of fear. I
Yeah.
bet fear was right up in your face.
Oh, Dana, things got worse before they got better.
Say it, tell us about it.
So when I left my job, I left my job in June because I was employed as an assistant principal. I only got paid through July, not through August or September like a teacher usually does. And I didn't have savings to fall back on, right? I didn't have like a cush. I wasn't one of those people who like, oh, I worked this high. I worked in like, what do you call it? Like investing. And then I decided, oh, I want to do something else. And I've got this cushion. No, I was in education. I didn't have that. And I was courageous enough where I did have a background in psychology, and as an educator and a female leader, I knew how to coach because that's
Mhm.
kind of what my job was. And so I did move into coaching for about a year, and I made some good money pretty quickly. I had got a few clients, was getting paid well, and then January came around. Right. So this was about 7 months after I left my job, and it all dried up.
Mhm.
And then I freaked out because how am I going to live? How am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to keep a roof over my head? Had never not kept a roof over my head since I was 18 years old. And I ended up having to move back. I not move back, but I ended up having to move out of my apartment that I loved, that I'd been in for 5 years, longest place I ever lived. And I had to move in with my ex to help me get back on my feet financially. And it took a while. And that was very humbling, very humbling. For a few years, I lived with him, and then I lived with another friend. And again, that shame came up. Like, how did I get here? How did I let this happen? Now, when I reframe it, I think, look at the courage that you had to try something new and something different, right? But the perfectionist in me was like, you fool, right? What'd you do
Yeah.
this for? But that's the fear talking, right? That's the all the stuff I still had to heal. So
I love that you're naming the perfectionist because she shows up a lot, like in every conversation I have, as long as it's with a woman. Like men are not telling me about it.
Yeah.
Like, right? Because I don't know what it is exactly. I'm on a quest to figure it out. Thanks, Brene Brown, for helping us out with that. But
I can share some insight that I've read. I read The Confidence Code, the book The Confidence Code. I don't know if you ever read that.
no,
And I might get the research, I won't be able to name the research, but because I'm an educator, I happen to know that one piece of it is that because our education system is primarily led by women, and we do struggle with perfectionism, we instill unconsciously, we can, if we're not very careful, which most of I don't think are, we can instill that same perfectionist mentality into our young women, right?
yeah.
Our and so I know
Awake if we're not awake to it. If we're
if we're
not even awake to the fact that we have it ourselves. And of course, we're
exactly.
going to do the same thing our educators and our parents did, which is just share what we know. Share what we know.
Mhm.
Yeah, and like sideline conversation is I too was like good strong student, A is 4.0, like how much can I hustle to get the best grade? And now I have these three beautiful daughters, and I remember the first time my oldest daughter came home with something that wasn't like they don't even use grades. They use, the
Right,
standards.
right.
I was like, what do you mean you're not yet meeting standards? And I heard myself say that to her. And I was like, whoa, sister, like my whole work is growth mindset and celebrating progress and honoring the growth. And I just said, what do you need to do to exceed standards to she was 7 then.
Right.
But so here's the difference. I'm awake. I'm awake to this. You're awake too. Most people are not even awake to the fact that they have this thing that's like, you have to do better. You have to do better. And we're not even awake to the idea that there's a voice in our head that sounds like us, but isn't us. It's that part, our subconscious, our nervous system that's just trying to protect ourselves. Somewhere psychology suggests it's a smaller version of us that wasn't well cared for. But the truth is that it's not us. We are the, I'm breaking out my favorite. I knew it was coming. The magic is in waking up and paying attention to that need to be perfect. Here she comes, the need to be perfect. And then the transformation is here she comes. Oh, she's me. She needs love and attention. So she can sit down and I can go be a strong C student.
And
That's
that
what
she
I
is
tell, that's what
beautiful.
I tell my clients. I'm like, we're going to do strong C work. And the
Yeah.
strong C student shows up with a good attitude. They're present. They don't do much else.
Well, and that you are beautiful in your imperfection,
Yeah.
right? Because I'm not a highly religious person, but I've heard the saying somewhere, right? Like God loves you imperfections and all. And I mean, when I think about how I want to view other people and the grace I want to give other people, I have to give that grace to myself. And that has not been an easy learning for me. Um, But thank goodness for age and
Right.
experience and
So much
wisdom,
wisdom. Yeah.
right?
Okay. So tell us more. Tell us about your learnings. Tell us about what you're learning about yourself in the process. Tell us more about grace, more about wisdom. What are your learnings along the journey? And then we'll shift into tell us about how it looks now.
Well, I think something that I have struggled with is codependency, right? And it had been, it's funny because when I had gone to therapy prior, years before in another relationship that I was trying to get out of, not because it was toxic, but because I was unhappy, the word codependency came up for the first time. And I was like, I am not an alcoholic.
Right.
I'm not addicted to drugs. My father was, right?
Okay.
And she introduced me what codependency really means, right? It's like, no, yes, it can mean that, but you are addicted to being in relationship, right?
Mm.
And the need for another person to, right? And I was like, what? She even gave me that book. I forget the woman's name.
Codependent no more.
Got it. She gave me the book. And I was don't know about this.
What? Wait, but just for listeners, like if it's so common that when you have an alcoholic or an addicted parent, that's why there's a whole program called Adult Children of Alcoholics, ACOA. And what do we all have in common? The thing that you're just sharing about, this need for relationships. So get back to you.
Yeah. So that was the first time it was introduced. And then when I went through this, very difficult, toxic relationship, it was brought up again, not by one therapist, but by two. And at that point, I had to admit that they were right. And I hated that. Lots of self-hatred for myself because I saw my mom do this.
Hmm.
Those relationships hurt my heart as a young person. And so I had a lot of resentment towards her for that. But for me, I was like, ugh, how did that happen? Because that's the opposite of who I want to be. And I still struggle with it, but I would say maybe I went to the other extreme because now I haven't been in a relationship for a long time, right? But not because I don't want to be. I just am a lot more picky now, right?
Hmm.
Maybe a little more careful, but that's something that definitely I had to struggle to work through. We had to figure out how the two of us were going to kind of separate from each other because we both became codependent on the relationship, more so because we fulfilled a lot of needs for each other.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so that was something that I learned from there.
Let's talk about breakthroughs, Lori. Miracles, breakthroughs. I've found that in the work of transforming setbacks to comebacks, there's always either one or a series of breakthrough moments, miracles just meaning a shift from one way of seeing something to another. Course in Miracles calls it a shift from fear to love in all its variances. Was there a breakthrough that you had that you love to share that sort of shifted you from going down one path to the path that you're on now?
Um, well, I will share that at the time that was happening, I actually discovered Gabby Bernstein and Hal Elrod. Hal Elrod, but before Miracle, he wrote the book The Miracle Morning, and before he
Mm.
was huge, before it went like worldwide, we were actually Facebook friends, and there was an opportunity where I even thought I might be able to write a children's book with him. So that's how familiar I was with his work. And I was waking up every day doing all of the savers, is what he calls them. And then a few weeks after doing that, I was at the bookstore and literally I saw the word miracles, which is what Hal talks about on this new book, this other book that was Gabby Bernstein's book. And it was
May cause miracles.
28, yeah, May Cause Miracles, 28 days of, something or something. I was like, well, this sounds perfect, right? A perfect little follow-up as to what I had already been doing. I've always been into personal development. Um, that's why I love you so much because just like the energy that you have, it was like, somebody else who gets it, right? Like my friend who gets it. And because I just always want to grow and expand. And so I that really helped me. And at that time, like I said, I am a person who has always been great at setting goals and checking them off the list. I think like so many women do. But at the time, I had felt like, man, I've done a lot in my life. What else is there to do besides go to South Africa and volunteer, which I'd always wanted to do, get married and have kids, which I had no control over. What was the third thing I wanted to do? I forget what the third thing I wanted to do. I think it was probably buy a house. But the one thing I had control over was going to South Africa. So I woke up every day. I did the affirmations. I visualized, and I raised $6,000, $5,000 for that one. I raised $5,000 to volunteer in rural South Africa. Lo and behold, I went. And gosh, when you travel on your own, make things happen, you realize who you are, right? And what you're capable of.
Mhm.
And so that was a huge breakthrough for me. I wasn't down for the count. I was like, job's going to come to an end. I know it's coming because I quit. So it's over in June 14th. I was on a plane to Paris first, where I stayed the day in Paris, and then I flew into Johannesburg and was there for almost a month. So
Wow. That sounds like a miracle to me. And I heard you say, I'm wondering if you can speak to, like, just to bring it to the ground a little bit, because, a lot of my work is how do we generate miracles? How do we do it on repeat? How do you transform your current situation into your wildest dreams? And part of that is on the ground practices. So I heard you say, I'd love for you to elaborate on what you mean when you say, like, you did how Elrod savers, or you
mm,
can speak to visualization, or you can speak to affirmations. Like, what was the spirit? Because this is a spiritual journey. You mentioned religion, but this is not about religion.
mm.
This is about access to something that's bigger than us, that has a path that's beautiful for us, that's always working in our favor. What were the practices that you used? And maybe not even knowing it to access that, which clearly propels you into your dream of South Africa. Like, tell our listeners one or two things that they can do right now to access that
I'm
path.
just so excited about the timing of this conversation because as I set my goals for 2025, as you know, we always do, one of the things that I'm aware of is okay, my health is, you know, I am now a person who works out regularly. I'm a woman who does that. And what I want to do is pick up some of these practices that I have abandoned because I
Mm,
know they're so powerful. So some of those practices are savers stand. Let's see if I can remember what it stands for. S is silence. So right, you just sit and no, I think it's silence. I think you sit in silence just for a few minutes. Or you could do this in 6 minutes, SAVERS, right? 1 minute for each. But if you wake up an hour earlier to dedicate this time, then it's even more powerful. But I think silence, saying affirmations, ones that you believe, right? So instead of saying, probably at the time I might have said like something, I might have chosen to say, I am working to, or maybe I'm getting better at being resilient versus saying I'm resilient, right?
right.
So that was a learning lesson is how you say your affirmations is important because you want to believe them.
Your
Um,
subconscious has to be convinced. And
yeah,
if you say, I'm a billionaire, and your subconscious is going to be like, no, you're not, sit down.
right, 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 right.
But if you say something like, I'm improving my financial literacy every day, or I'm growing financially every day in every way, that's a little gentler. And your
Right.
subconscious is willing to say, like, okay, yeah, maybe on that. And that's
Mm,
all you need to get
yeah.
in. Okay, so S is silence. I pulled it up for us too. A is affirmation.
B is visualization. So every year I do create a vision board, and that vision board was a huge part of my practice. I actually made a little meditation nook, and at the time I wasn't even a meditator. I still don't really meditate, but what I would do every morning is I would sit at my little meditation nook with my vision board that had almost everything about South Africa on it, including giraffes and just like what I was going to experience along with I'd light some candles, I might play some music, and I might pray, or I might just meditate and try to clear my mind and like, right? Or and also really look at my vision board.
Hmm.
Um, and then E is exercise, right? You like move your body for a few minutes. R is reading. So you read something inspiring or just read something. Again, it could be for as short of a minute or up to, 30. And then S is scribing. So you journal essentially. And what I in Gabby's book already had you doing some of those things. So
Mhm.
that book starts with your day starts with an affirmation. I think it might even start with journaling and then you do the thing and then it ends with an affirmation. So that was a nice support. And I did that. I did that and I wanted to say, sorry, there's something really important beyond all of that is I made the decision that I was going to South Africa.
Say again. Say that again.
I made the decision. Like there was no doubt. It was just decided. I didn't know how, but I knew I could, and I knew, I knew it was going to happen. So,
So let me pause you there because this is the framework for transformation. And this is all I do in the world. Okay. So we get clear on what we would love, not what we want. Want is vibration with scarcity, what we would love. So it sounds like you would love to go to South Africa.
mhm,
You get crystal clear. You see the giraffes. You see the bus. You see the kiddos. You see the countryside. You visualize it either in your mind, you rehearse it in your visualization. You see yourself waving at the giraffe or teaching the kids or feeling your hand on the earth. Maybe your passport stamp, you're holding your passport with the stamp. You see yourself in that visualization. But what you just said is what draws the line in the sand from I would love it to it's on its way to me.
mhm.
And it's I'm deciding for it. And the thing is that we're deciding for a bunch of stuff right now. We're always deciding. We're always creating, we're always manifesting, we're always deciding, but we're not awake most of the time to what we're deciding for. Most of the time we decide for, I'm not good enough. This isn't possible. Let's be realistic. Wah, 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 wah. But it sounds to me, Lori, that you woke up and you said, I'm deciding. I know what I would love and I'm deciding for it. And then tell us what happened after that.
One thing that happened was I did have to fundraise for it. Um, and I was volunteering, so that was all legit. But I remember I went to visit my mom in Las Vegas and we sat down at lunch with her friends. And her one friend, I'll never forget it. I haven't seen him since, but I thanked him for it. He said to me, something along the lines of like, don't let your foot off the pedal, because I was fundraising, right? And I wasn't sure how. I don't know. At the time, I didn't know people with money, like right. Like my family wasn't going to give me the money to go. I didn't come from that kind of means, and I had to raise 5 grand. So I started. It wasn't a GoFundMe page, but it was something similar at the time. But that man saying that to me made me get real creative, and I didn't just fundraise the $5,000. I surpassed it. I had a woman who I didn't even know donate $1,000 to me, and then she came back when I was closer to my goal and donated another 500. I mean, it was incredible. And then through that, I had other people. At the time, I want to say now I think we see Instagram, we see everybody traveling everywhere. People travel a lot more easily. But at the time, even in 2014 is when it wasn't as common. And so I had a lot of people saying to me, "You've inspired me so much. I'm now going to go, volunteer in Cambodia, or I'm going to take that trip I always wanted to take." And that is actually what helped me get clients in the beginning when it was the same time I was trying to life coach, was people saw that I was just doing it. But it does, I think, when I think about my breakthroughs from my setbacks, it's always starts with a decision.
Hmm.
Always starts with a decision.
And can I just go back about 2 steps and say, this is what happens, my sister, is that when you have your breakthrough and you go for your dream, you become a lighthouse.
Mhm.
You literally become, I just went with my 9-year-old to the lighthouse in New Orleans. And like what happens is the light comes on and everything that needs direction to come home has what it needs to come home to the harbor. You become a lighthouse and you light the path for other women to do exactly what you said, to pursue their dreams, whether it's Cambodia or adventuring or coaching or business building or whatever. We have a duty to ourselves to follow our dreams, to put the gas pedal, push the gas pedal in our own dreams. And as a result, other women are able to do the same thing. We see and we match and we mirror. That's possible for you. That means it's possible for me too. And in doing that, we set each other free. We bring each other home. So I went off on a little tangent there, but I just wanted to yeah, you became a lighthouse. Of course, people were drawn. You magnetized as women who wanted what you have.
Can I share a win that happened
Right
in the
now,
moment that
do
was
it now.
really blew me away? I I had a friend from this from the sixth grade that I had never talked to since the sixth grade. Didn't know where she was living. She apparently was following me on Facebook, and she reached out to me. She was my first client, and she came to me because she wanted to take a trip. But that is not actually what she wanted. She really wanted to leave the man that she was with, and she needed to,
What?
and she did. And it's just amazing how, like, how did, how, it just blew me away that she reached out, that she had been following me for a while. It started with when I learned how to snowboard at the age of 35. She was like, I've been watching you since you've done, X, Y, or Z. And I was like, really? And so to your point, you never know who's watching, right? You never know who you're inspiring or who you're influencing by the way that you live your life and the decisions that you make.
Yes. That's my experience too. My very first client was a woman that I hadn't talked to her in 20 years. She was from my days of being a principal. And but she came and she was like, I've been watching you. Help me. Help me with the work that you're doing. So um, so we never know. We become magnets for exactly what we need and who needs us. And I love that. One of my mentors says, like, our longings for what we would love for our dreams are just echoes for the dreams who are on their way to us. Our longings to help people are the echoes of the people who are ready for us to help them. So whether that's coaching or in service or wherever, that's a gorgeous example. Okay, so I love that. I looked it up. If you're listening and you want to know more about savers, it's miraclemorning.com. That feels like a really gorgeous on the ground thing you can do to access what I like to call the spiritual accelerator to your goals. And by that, I mean, what would take somebody just using the power of their mind 10 years? Once you tap into the spirit, you collapse time and accomplish that, as long as you're able to maintain energetic harmony with what you would love in a fraction of that. So you did the work, you went on your trip, and here we are now. So tell us about now. Like, tell us about, you've had the breakthroughs, you've done the practices, you've had the nonlinear journey to this gorgeous life that you have, this beautiful woman that you are, inside, outside, upside down. Tell us what it looks like right now, the things you've learned, the things you're proud of, the things you're celebrating.
Um, I think one of the things I'm celebrating for sure is the parts of me that have always been there, that are my strengths. So again, it's just so timely, this conversation. I've always been goal oriented, right? I'm not afraid of change. I mean, I don't always like it, but I'm not afraid of it, right? I want to see what's next. I want to expand, because I know that when I expand, I help others expand. And I'm at that place now where when I look back, like, this has always been a strength, right? You set the goal, or you help other people set the goal, and you figure out a plan on how to reach that goal. And now, with my wisdom of, it's not always about the goal, right? It's not always about the goal, but who I am becoming as I work towards that goal and how I want to feel. And so, to take it back, remember I said I saw a picture of myself and I was like, who is that person? I don't recognize
Yes.
that person, because that person
Yes.
was in pain, right? That I was in pain. I hadn't been making money. It was once again rubbing up against my identity. Like, who am I if I'm not working and making money? Or who am I if I'm not in relationship? And so that it presented itself to me like, well, here's who you are right now. And I did not like that. That's not who I wanted to be. Because that's not the real me, right? That's the Lori who's in pain. And so thankfully I saw a picture and I decided, like it
Yes.
has happened to me several times in my life, where I, 2 or 3 times in my life, I've seen a picture and I was like, who is that? I don't recognize her. Um, Even though what was interesting was that over that 10-year period, there were times where I really didn't recognize me. And I'm not talking physically. I'm just like, I did not. feel like I knew who I was. And in that moment in February, I felt like I was in a good place where I knew who I was. But when I saw that picture, it's like that's not who I am. So now we need to elevate, right, your health. And so I've been on this journey since I think it was the beginning of February, where I was like,
Can I just, because I know a little bit about this. So Lori and I we've been knowing each other for some years, and we sat down at the end of last year and set some goals, right? And you had several goals. And I watched you focus on prioritize on one of them, all of them, but this one specifically. And I'm curious, why did you choose health first?
mm. Well, I suffer from migraines. I have for over 20 years of my life, and that impacts all areas of my life. It's put me in bed for days at a time, sometimes multiple weeks in a month. And also, I know what it feels like when I am loving my body. I know the confidence that I feel when I love my body, when I take care of my body, because I have many times. And I also had complete control. Well, I had the most control over that, right? The other
By
goal,
control, do you mean, can you say a little bit more about what you mean?
yeah.
Like, do you mean agency? When you say control, what does that mean?
I mean, I had the most influence over the outcome,
Okay.
right? So another goal, for example, what is to find a partner. I don't have as much control over that. I have some influence, right? How I show up, who I'm being, but I don't have control over that end result. But with my health, I have much more control and influence over that. I can take actions and see improvement and benefit from that. And gosh, the benefits that come along with that. I mean, not only am I migraine free for the first
Right?
time in 20 years, it's amazing. But I am 35 pounds lighter, which means I have so much more energy. I love my body, and I could not say that 35 pounds ago. I wouldn't have said that. I now work out regularly. It is the day before Christmas Eve, and I was at the gym, and tomorrow I'll be at the
Same
gym. You
girl,
know
same
why? Because
girl,
I
same.
decided I'm a girl that goes to the gym,
Yeah.
right? And yes, I'm
Look,
strong. I
listen, if you're not watching the YouTube, if you're just listening, can you hold it up again, Lori? She's holding up her bicep. It is so sexy and strong. And also, she's going to tell you where to find her, but you need to go find her on Facebook or Instagram because she is so spit and sexy. And you can tell that this woman loves living in her own body. And I imagine you didn't feel that way in February when you saw the picture.
Oh my gosh, no. It hurt to get up off the sofa. I'm 5'2". I was 172 pounds. It's the heaviest I ever weighed. And I didn't even know it until I saw that picture. I own a scale, but I hadn't been stepping on it.
Yeah. So Lori, we do, of course, tout ourselves, could talk to you for hours and we'll need a part two to this conversation. But as we close out this part one, can you speak to, I have so many questions, but I think the biggest one is the message that you have, right? Because you're not the same woman and that you were 10 years ago with the same setbacks and hangups and hurts and habits. You literally are the most gorgeous, expanded evolution of yourself. It sounds like you've come home to yourself. So what message do you have? And I don't want to go back and give yourself a message. Like, how about the woman who feels exactly the way you described yourself feeling, and she feels it now? What message do you have for her?
The thing that comes up for me is that you are one decision away from having everything that you want. You just have to decide. You just have to decide whatever that is, right?
Okay, so let me just say that again. You are one decision away from having everything you want. You just have to decide. Say more. Speak into that.
I mean, you get to decide, right? You get to decide who you are, what you want. It, I truly, my whole life have operated from a place that life is a gift. Every day is a gift. When somebody tells me, oh my gosh, I'm on the other side of 40, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're on the other side of 40. That's
Bye.
amazing.
The best
You
side.
live that long. Honestly, like people take for granted that you are as old as you are, right? And I know that that is who I really am. Like that is the place that I operate. It's why I love adventure. It's why I love growth because life really is short. 100 years is a really short time.
Mhm.
And yeah, so every day it is a decision, and we're faced with a lot of them. Let's be honest, but it can be as simple as that. And also I want to say this, it's also so important to decide to surround yourself by people who, like yourself, my one of my closest dear friends, who will support you in being who you want to be, right? And lift helping you up because you don't have to do it all by yourself. That's another myth we women love to like get into. That's a whole other
Thanks,
podcast.
patriarchy. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
We're
But I
going to be
mean,
done with that.
it's a decision to be intentional about your connections, right? Even when it's hard, like the more you put out, the more you get back. So that has been a life changer also this year. Is that I wanted more connections, so I connect with people who I love more often, and then I feel more full.
You're one decision away from everything you've ever wanted. Put your foot on the gas pedal and be intentional about the actions that you take, specifically who you're surrounding yourself with. And I think that I want to end with, we just had our annual, let's reflect on this year and be excited about the one that's on its way. Whenever this is published, just know that it's December right now. And, we started the conversation around what are my goals, but we really, it's not even, you flagged this, it's not even about the goals. It's about who is the woman that you're becoming. Who is the woman that you're becoming, deciding for her on behalf of her, and then taking intentional gas pedal action to be her. You're already her. So I'll end with this question, Lori, like who is the woman that you're becoming now? Hopefully we never say, I've made it, I'm done, I'm perfect, it's over. Right? Because that's a lie. That thinks patriarchy. Perfection is a lie of the patriarchy. And so who, Lori, is the woman that you're becoming?
I'm becoming a woman who pours into herself, who prioritizes her health and well-being, who pours into her relationships and pours into others, and who embraces her creativity and courage. That's who I'm becoming.
I love that so much. I love you dearly and desperately. And I sign off I first thank you for your time
Thank
and your
you.
spirit and your bravery.
And I love you too.
Before I sign off, where can we find you, Lori? Where can we find you? What are you up to and where can we find you?
I mean, it's pretty simple. If you want to know more, if you're curious, you can find me on Facebook, Lori Heisler, Heisler, pretty simple, Knoxville, Tennessee, but also loriheisler.com. I do have a website. You can learn more about me. And in terms of that creative endeavor, I also do a lot of home decorating and I create art, beautiful art. So littlehavenstudios.com is another website. So yeah.
And it's all gorgeous and fueled by that woman who is in a constant state of becoming a more gorgeous rendition of who you are always been, Lori, always.
Thanks.
So I love you. I'm so grateful for you. I'm so proud of you. And Lori, for you and everybody who's listening, I believe in your ability to create a gorgeous, breathtaking life you love. Thank you so much. Mwah.
Mwah.